McLaren just lost their entire 2026 car before it ever raced because the FIA found something they were never supposed to see. This wasn't a small tweak or a gray area wing. It was a hidden design concept so powerful that the FIA banned the whole car on the spot. And here's the insane part: Mercedes was involved in building it. Subscribe right now, because once you understand what the FIA discovered, you'll realize the 2026 championship may already be decided before the first race. Just 3 weeks before winter testing, McLaren received a confidential notice from the FIA's technical department. The document, short but devastating, cited a violation of Article 3.7.2c in the 2026 technical regulations. It wasn't about a bodywork infraction or a missing sensor. It was about the very core of the MCL40's aerodynamic concept, the floor. This single component underpins the car's performance philosophy for the new era. And now, with that floor deemed non-compliant, McLaren's entire car architecture has been thrown into question. The message was clear: redesign it, or you don't race. The controversy lies in how the FIA interpreted a clause that has historically gone unchallenged. Article 3.7.2c demands that aerodynamic surfaces remain structurally static under dynamic load. McLaren's engineers never denied their floor behaves differently at speed. But they insisted it wasn't active. There were no electronics, no moving parts. The change in geometry came from a multi-layered material that flexed slightly under cornering forces and returned to shape under low load. To Woking, this was smart design. To the FIA, it was a step too far. The band floor was no ordinary component. It was a triumph of synchronized engineering between McLaren and Mercedes. The material used was developed alongside combustion torque maps from the new Mercedes 2026 power unit. The engine's microbursts of energy were timed to coincide with peak aero load moments, triggering subtle floor deformation through vibration. The result? Extra downforce when cornering, reduced drag on straights, all without a single actuator. It was elegant, passive, and terrifyingly effective. That synergy is what made this floor concept revolutionary. And it's what led to its downfall. From the outside, McLaren's 2026 chassis looked conventional: narrow side pods, refined packaging, forward-biased cooling. But underneath, this floor redefined airflow. It didn't just channel vortices, it breathed. The floor's structure could slightly compress and expand under load, reshaping the diffuser throat mid-corner to accelerate airflow. No cameras caught it. No parts visibly moved. But wind tunnel data showed up to 12% more peak downforce in medium-speed corners. For Formula One, that's not just an edge, that's a weapon. One powerful enough to demand attention. The timing of the FIA's response was brutal. Teams are weeks away from finalizing their chassis for homologation. McLaren had already committed millions into molds, materials, and production tooling. The band floor affects suspension mounts, airflow targets, and engine packaging. It's not a quick fix. According to insiders, removing this floor may affect as much as 40% of the car's aero baseline. That's not an adjustment, it's a reset. And with every team working on tight off-season schedules, delays can snowball into race day consequences. What makes this more explosive is that other teams were exploring similar ideas. At least 3 rival operations, Alpine, Aston Martin, and Haas, had begun investigating flexible floor structures using passive material response. But none had validated it in full scale. McLaren was the first to correlate tunnel, simulator, and track data on a rolling test rig. They were ahead. And that lead, combined with the FIA's silence until now, makes this feel like a punishment for being first, not for being illegal. That distinction will fuel paddock debates well into the season. And so, McLaren begins 2026 not as the defending champion, but as the hunted innovator turned regulatory casualty. The very floor that could have launched a title bid is now banned. The very synergy that marked them as pioneers is now forbidden. The car that once represented a vision of the future now becomes a cautionary tale. But here's the real question: in a sport that claims to reward innovation, how far can a team go before they're told not by the stopwatch, but by the rulebook that they've gone too far? The ruling that stunned McLaren wasn't triggered by a protest or a whistleblower. It came from within the FIA's own regulatory review process, specifically during the routine cross-validation of teams' 2026 computational fluid dynamics (CFD) packages and material deformation simulations. When McLaren submitted their predictive aero performance files, the FIA's engineers flagged an anomaly in airflow consistency under lateral G-loads. In essence, the car's floor was producing 2 distinct aerodynamic profiles depending on cornering load, something no other entry had shown at that stage. That was the first alarm bell. Digging deeper, the FIA's Aerodynamic Surfaces Working Group discovered that McLaren's floor incorporated a multi-phase composite material layered in such a way that it altered shape at different frequencies of vibration. These frequencies, incredibly, were tuned to the torque pulses of the new Mercedes power unit. As combustion cycles oscillated during acceleration, they created micro-pressure variations inside the floor cavity. The material's response? A barely measurable deflection invisible to the eye but profound in aerodynamic impact. No electronics. No hydraulics. Just a passive structural echo of engine rhythm. This floor effectively acted like a fluidic valve under the car, modulating diffuser stall based on power unit behavior. Under acceleration out of corners, the floor narrowed, boosting the Venturi effect. Under braking or coast, it relaxed. The gain? Roughly 12% additional downforce in corner exit conditions according to one engineer close to the data without increasing drag on the straights. That kind of selective aero is unheard of without illegal active elements. But McLaren's innovation didn't rely on movement. It relied on chemistry and physics, making it incredibly hard to police and nearly impossible to replicate without their exact material sourcing. The FIA's dilemma was philosophical. The 2026 technical regulations define active aerodynamics as any system that changes airflow based on driver input or electronically triggered mechanisms. McLaren used neither. Yet the result was undeniably dynamic. The FIA coined a new term in their internal notes: dynamic structural compliance. That concept now enters the Formula One vocabulary for the first time. It marks a turning point in how materials science intersects with regulatory intent and exposes just how far ahead McLaren had gone. The wider paddock, meanwhile, is reeling from what this means. Teams had assumed the new 2026 rules with their dramatic power unit shift to 50% electric output would equalize the field. But McLaren's floor changed that. By extracting performance from passive structure, they created a feedback loop between engine, chassis, and aero. It was a hybrid concept in the truest sense, not just mechanically, but functionally. And while rivals were chasing battery recovery and thermal balance, McLaren was quietly building a car that used its combustion engine as an aero trigger. It was radical. And now, it's gone. What may be most frustrating for McLaren fans is the timing. The FIA had seen early material data from McLaren as far back as Q3 2025. But no objections were raised. No technical directives were issued. The design passed pre-season concept scrutineering. Only after full-scale correlation testing including rolling road wind tunnel validation and track simulation feedback did the FIA intervene. That delay cost McLaren precious months. Their floor was production ready. Tooling was underway. Every aerodynamic department in Woking was aligned around this architecture. To lose it now, in January, is to rip the core out of the car. And yet, the implications stretch beyond one team. The FIA's ruling sets a precedent. Aerodynamic behavior is now defined not just by visible geometry, but by material response under load. That means all teams must reassess their use of shape memory alloys, layered composites, even brake duct flexibility. It's a regulatory shift from what a surface looks like to how it behaves. McLaren may be the first to suffer under this new paradigm, but every constructor now faces a new design philosophy, one where compliance isn't just structural. It's behavioral. And it starts now. McLaren thought they were innovating within the limits. Now, they are being punished for seeing what others missed. This moment is not about legality anymore, it's about perception. When your engineering is so advanced that regulators struggle to define it, you stop playing by written rules and start navigating the unwritten fears of those trying to keep the field even. And that's the battlefield McLaren just stepped into. This ruling didn't catch McLaren by surprise. What caught them was the timing. A silent approval through months of development suddenly turned into disapproval when their system started to look unstoppable. It wasn't the idea that was banned, it was its success. The closer McLaren got to proving it worked, the more uncomfortable the silence became. The FIA didn't act when it was theory. They acted when it became dangerous. There's a bitter irony here. In Formula One, every team is told to chase the limit, to question the regulations, to explore every comma, every loophole, every millimeter of technical margin. McLaren did exactly that. They didn't cheat. They didn't exploit politics. They out-engineered the competition. And now, they're being told they went too far, not because they broke the law, but because they exposed how narrow and reactive the law can be. The phrase, dynamic compliance, did not exist last month. It wasn't in any directive. It wasn't in any technical guideline. But now it's the reason a season's worth of aerodynamic philosophy has been thrown in the bin. McLaren designed a floor around a blank space in the rulebook. And now the rulebook is writing that space retroactively. This isn't a clarification, it's a rewriting of boundaries after someone dared to color outside the lines. In this context, the story becomes larger than McLaren. This is about the very essence of Formula One. Should the sport reward genius that wasn't anticipated? Or should it shut it down in fear of imbalance? It's not a debate about rules anymore, it's a debate about vision. And today, McLaren's vision was shut down, not because it was flawed, but because it was too far ahead. And for fans who lived through moments like Braun GP's diffuser, Red Bull's blown exhausts, or Mercedes' DAS system, this moment feels painfully familiar. The cycle repeats: innovation, denial, regulation. Only the badge on the car changes. This time it's papaya orange. Next time it will be someone else. What stays the same is the warning. In Formula One, if you create something too perfect, the system will try to break it. So now the tone for 2026 is set. Innovation is no longer judged by its effectiveness. It's judged by its disruptiveness. If it threatens the competitive order too directly, it becomes a liability. And if McLaren, with their technical depth, Mercedes support, and back-to-back championships, can be cut down before a single lap is run, then no one is safe. The message is loud. Stay inside the box. Or get boxed out.